Wanna Be with Not Your Normal Conversation. And I am sitting here with Erica Marshall. Erica, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. Um, I thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you. For anybody who's watching the show, if you have questions for Erica, just leave them in a live feed and she'll go back and she'll answer them. Right now, we're going to have a very candid and open conversation. And I invite you to ask her any questions or ask me any questions that you want. I'll answer mine. I can't answer for her, but I can answer for me. We'd love to hear some feedback, but I just want to get right to it. Erica, thank you for being on Not Your Normal Conversation. I appreciate you. We have known each other for many, many years. And we haven't always met on in the best circumstances or under the best circumstances. The first time I met you, you were a young lady coming through South Bay Correctional Facility. I also was an inmate there, and we met under those circumstances. For some reason, I gravitated towards you, but you came in and you were not doing too good. And I think anybody that comes through those doors is not always doing well, no matter if they come in on drugs or not, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually beat down. So, I before we came on live, we talked a little bit, and I told you that I wanted to share with you a video that I found. And today I'm talking to you about your recovery. And recovery is your only option. You've been clean for 7 years. And I want the listeners to understand that, not everybody chooses to be an addict or be an active addict. And not everybody likes it. And sometimes when people use, it's because they're trying to cover up something else. But before we get into the interview, I want to show you this video clip that I found. So do you mind if I share my screen with you?
Not at all. Please
Okay.
do.
Okay. So, Erica, what we're about to watch is a video of the war on drugs in Boston. And this is from Channel 4 News. So I just want you to take a look at this video and tell me, I'm just going to play a little clip of it and just tell me how it makes you feel and what you think about it.
See if she starts heading out of town, picks up her pace.
When the troopers pull her over, this 25-year-old mother from a suburban town shakes as she grabs her ID. She has a gram of heroin and $1,000 cash.
Would you just drive around the block and then he comes out and hits you up?
She tells Sergeant Matt O'May she initially got hooked on Percocet. She's been trying to get clean.
You just got to get yourself right now, okay? For you and your kid.
A sad story, but one he hears all the time.
If you set up around the city early morning and just sat there and looked for people coming in from the suburbs, you'd be able to spot them for hours.
The streets of Lawrence are a hub in an opioid network that spans all of northern New England, feeding a region with an insatiable addiction problem. Sergeant O'May and the gang unit allowed us an exclusive look at the daily fight to stop dealers and users.
The car in the front is the New Hampshire car from Miniatures. The car in front of us directly is a known drug trafficker.
How you doing?
O'May arrested this suspect just weeks ago with a large amount of fentanyl. They've had success with traditional methods, informants, searches, and stops, but they say they can only scratch the surface. Faced with an overwhelming crisis, the state police now trying a more aggressive tactic.
Attack it before it even gets here, in transit. That's our mission.
Is this a recognition that we need to...
I'm going to stop it right here. Now, when I saw that video, even now as I watch it, I'm saddened by it. That this is the world that we live in right now. And when you watched it, did it bring up anything for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It automatically brought me back to that time of darkness, first of all. Like seeing the cop pull her over, see her with that look on her face, like, how am I going to explain this? You know what I mean? And she's just trying to cover up some pain. Because bottom line is she's just trying to numb, she's out there doing the wrong thing. Like I remember being that girl and that sucked. You know, when you got caught by the cops, it's like that immediate feeling of like, oh, please God, don't take me. Like, I'll do anything. Just let me go out and get that next one. Like, I used to do that. 90% of the time I had warrants. 90% of the time I was going to jail. Right. You know, I was that default queen. I could not do probation. I would go into the programs. I would sit there. Yep, I'll do the right thing for 3 days. And then I was back on the corner. And I'm a mother too. Right. You know, and I have those 3 kids that, you know, at that time before I have my 2 kids now that were adopted. So I knew how that felt.
Right.
So that was just an awful feeling. And it brought me right back to that time in the middle of using, you know, with the wet socks. You've been out there for days. That was just so disgusting. It felt really, really, really strong, you know.
Right.
So I remember that.
Right. So I'm going to ask you to share with everyone that's listening. I want you to tell me where you grew up and what your childhood was like.
I grew up in Malden, Massachusetts. I'm actually born originally from Cambridge. And it was, I had a good childhood, but it turned really dark fast. You know, I was really young. I have 2 older sisters. You know, I don't communicate with them today. There was a lot of DCF, well, DSS then. There was a lot of DSS in my house.
Right.
You know, and I didn't quite understand what was going on between my mom and my sisters. I was really young. You know, all I know is I had 2 older sisters. And for some reason, they didn't even like me as a child. I experienced a lot of rejection. You know, my sisters bullied me. You know, I was bullied a lot as a kid. You know, I didn't have the straight hair. I didn't have the support. I didn't have people to do my hair and dress me up in nice clothes.
Right.
You know, I grew up in the projects in Malden. So, you know, I had friends and stuff, but I didn't have family support. You know, my dad was in and out of my life. He, you know, he had 2 other kids, but he was there for them.
Right.
But he was never there for me. So I always felt a rejection as a child. You know, this was before I had used, this was before I had took a drink or a drug. You know, I experienced a lot of rejection from my own flesh and blood.
Right.
You know? So I had a whole lot of trust issues. You know, how can I trust you when I don't even have that support from my family?
Right.
You know, so it just turned really dark really fast, you know. And when my sister had like bullied me with like other kids around the neighborhood, like that was a really big start for me. And, you know, they ended up getting taken out of the house with DSS. Till this day, I don't know why.
Right.
But, you know, and I was the only child after a long time. You know, my mother, I love my mother. She's such a good woman. She's from the South. She's from Alabama. Right. She never played that. Right. You know, I didn't get the sleepovers like the other kids. I was very, very, you know, cornered in the house. I didn't get to go out and like hang out like regular kids did.
Right.
You know, so for me, I wanted to know, what are you hiding me from? Like my, what's the word? I wanted to experiment. Like, you know, I was so closed in as a child.
Right.
I wanted to see what was out there.
So let me ask you this question. Since you wanted to see what was out there, what was the first time, what did the first time look like for you when you took a drink or a drug? How old were you? And what was that experience like for you?
I believe I was 14 and I smoked marijuana for the first time that I had done anything. I smoked cigarettes, but I smoked marijuana and I didn't like it. I don't like till this day, like even in my addiction, I didn't like it. So, you know, I started drinking and, you know, I started drinking and like, I was a very lightweight kind of person. So I would drink like 2 beers and get really messed up. And, you know, when you're in the middle of drinking, you think, oh, I can take more. I'm not feeling it. And I was that kind of drunk that would get so drunk, I would puke. You know, I was a toilet hugger. And, you know, I knew my limits, but I would still drink like I could, you know, and next thing you know, that just graduated into more different things, you know?
Right. So let me ask you, besides the bullying in your home, your mom was not a drug user. You know, you said your dad was in and out of your life. Was there one traumatic experience in your life that led you to use, besides using alcohol, to use any other kind of drugs? What did that shift look like? As far as you said, you didn't like weed, you started drinking, and then that led you to what? What was your drug of choice?
I was smoking cocaine at that point. I was doing, sniffing coke, and then I started smoking the cocaine. So when I was 18, I had my oldest daughter, and, I was doing well. Her name is Sierra. And like, I'm thinking about it now, I have 7 years clean, and she's gonna be like 16 soon.
Right.
And I got pregnant with her. I was doing well. I was out of a program. I was back at my mother's house. I was doing the right thing. And then, of course, here comes the guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Here comes that one person that you would do anything for, that
Right.
attention. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was my downfall.
Right.
That was, and I started paying attention more to him than to her, and like today I could admit that. I have made peace with that. I've accepted that. But then he was my drug. He was
Right.
more important. And I got pregnant, and I got pregnant with twins. And they ended up I smoked weed for some dumb reason. The whole pregnancy, I stayed clean, Tawana. I got to be honest.
Right.
Stayed clean the whole time, and I was hanging out. The group I was hanging around was doing everything and everything.
Right.
They were smoking weed. I'm like, let me just take a toke of that. I believe I was like almost 9 months. I was at the end.
Right.
And I took some, and it brought me into labor.
Wow.
My water broke.
Wow.
One of my water broke.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is that? So I go to the hospital, and I truly believe it induced my labor.
I'm sure it did.
I went to Melrose Wakefield Hospital, and I remember them just giving me that look. Like, we know that look.
Of course.
All of a sudden, they come in the room. We had to call DSS at that time. We had to call DSS on you. At that moment, I'm clean. I have nothing in my system, of course, because the weed wore off. And, of course, I'm embarrassed now because they think I'm a piece of crap mom. I get the look in the hospital.
Right.
And they ended up opening a DSS case on me.
Right.
And I was really embarrassed, but I was young, too. 3 kids.
Right.
I knew I couldn't take care of those 3 kids.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I didn't fight. And I allowed them to go into the system. I couldn't even afford a pack of diapers. I didn't have a job. I was chasing this man. He was my drug at that point. And it wasn't that I didn't love my kids. I wasn't loved correctly. So I was not able to love correctly.
Okay.
And now I understand that.
Right.
I get it now.
So your drug use landed you in places like South Bay, MCI Framingham. How old were you the first time you went in? And what was going through your mind when they actually put the handcuffs on you? And were you sober when you got arrested?
Oh my God, Tawana, like I got arrested so many times. I don't remember my first one, but I do remember getting a lot of chances in the beginning. I would get arrested. They would give me a personal because, in the beginning, you don't have a record.
Right.
So, and I'm an addict. I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal to get out of the system.
Right.
Oh, I just didn't know. I want to do the right thing.
Right.
Hey, go into a program,
Right.
And that was the problem. I would sit there and get what I wanted. But when I got to the program, my attitude was different.
Right.
I would get to the program, Tawana, and then, get comfortable. They make you, go get your food stamp card.
Right.
You get a retroactive check in that program.
Right.
And I remember the first time I was in a halfway house, I got a retroactive check. Now, $300 to me then was a lot of money.
Right.
I'm someone that didn't work. I'm someone that did degrading things for drugs, money, and all those things.
Right.
So I was like, and money was a trigger for me.
Right.
So I would leave the program. And then next thing you know, no matter where I went and how far I went, I always ended up back downtown Boston on the damn corner. You know what I mean? No matter how much pain I was in, no matter how much I didn't want to do it, I always ran back to what was comfortable for me.
And when you say on the corner, are you talking about, at the time, you said you did anything for drugs. So that anything included selling your body.
anything at that point. Anything.
You know, I remember meeting you for the first time. And I remember saying to myself, as I'm sure plenty of people have said about me if they've ever met me inside of MCI Framingham or South Bay, what in the world was she thinking?
Mm-hmm.
She's such a good kid. Like, in my eyes, I always saw the best in you. And as I said to you before this interview, I didn't think you were going to come out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And as I didn't know if I was going to come out of this, and I had never touched a drug a day in my life. You and I shared a lot of stories about, you know, my past and the things that I went through in my past. And, you know, there was just something about you. I mean, physically, you were always in the whole for a fight, but I knew mentally and emotionally, you were a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point, when I saw you on the cell for the last time, I said, she's not going to come out of this alive. And dear God, please don't let anybody call me and tell me that she passed away, because I don't know if I'll be able to take that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot for me, because at that time, we had become family. And I don't think that a lot of people understand. And this is the reason why I do this show, because I don't think that people understand when you come from different walks of life and you go into prison. I've met some of the best people inside, people like you. I mean, we met 10, 15 years ago, and we're still friends to this day.
Yes.
We always found our way back to each other. But I think a lot of times people see convicted felons and people who are addicts and people who have committed crime and have gone to jail as just people that don't deserve to be humanized. So I brought you here today first to say, I'm so proud of you for the steps that you've taken, 7 years clean. And I used to go to the meetings when we were inside, because I figured, shoot, if I can't stop coming to jail, I must be an addict too. I don't have to do drugs. And so for me, I would go to those meetings and they would say, the only way you can gain it is to give it away. And I'm like, well, what in the world are these NAAA meetings talking about give it away? I don't want to give it away. I want to keep it because I need to stay out of prison. So what was your rock bottom? Because we talked about this too. What was your rock bottom? What was the turning point for you when you said, I can't, I mean, because you said you've been to jail so many times you can't even count, but what was your rock bottom where you said, I've had enough of this. I'm tired of losing my kids. I'm homeless. I'm living under a bridge. I'm selling my body. What was the turning point for you?
So for me, and like I, said, I have 3 other children that are permanently adopted. Like my rights have been terminated. Those three children. So, when I was out there, I ended up getting pregnant by my drug dealer. And even though the circumstances were pretty bad, I got blessed to be able to be a mom again. And when I got pregnant, I said, Erica, do you want to live or do you want to die? Now, I tear up every time because my son, the one you just saw, saved my life. And if it wasn't for him, I would not be here now. I didn't want to go through that again. I didn't want the looks I got, because they're pulling up rap sheets now. The looks that I got. And I just didn't want to keep doing it. And at that time, I'd have been using like 10 years, Tawana. I was already out there doing all that, in and out of jail, in and out of programs, locked up. Like I had enough.
Right.
00. I fit a 00 size pants. No offense to anybody that does, but it's the point. My natural body, I'm a size 12.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
So I'll never forget the day I got pregnant, and I did good. I went to a halfway house in New Bedford. I'm sorry, not New Bedford, New Day in Somerville.
Yeah.
And that's a really beautiful house. And I was doing a really good job, and I got a job, a first job. I was so proud
right.
to have, it was Pinkberry, a yogurt stand.
Right.
And it was on the books, it was a good paying job. I felt really good. And I don't know if I got overwhelmed. I don't know if I got bored, and I ended up relapsing.
Yeah.
And I share this all the time to share, like, because a lot of people get judged when they use while they're pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, we get judged anyway. I don't care. You can say what you want about me. I live a really good life.
Right.
But I did use halfway, being pregnant, and I used up until I gave birth. And I remember the nurse telling me, the adoptive parents are ready and prepared to take Justin if you don't do well.
Oh, God.
And I'm looking at you like, I'll never forget that feeling of I was already being judged as a failure. I was already that piece of crap mom, because they're reading all the stuff that I used to do. So that's what they know.
Right.
And that turned into motivation for
Right.
me. I don't know where. I didn't pray. I don't know where. It's called the spiritual awakening in the NA world. I had said, I was angry. And I said, you know what? I'm going to prove them wrong. Now, my goal should have been for my son. It should have been for me. But at that point, I'm proving you wrong.
Right.
Because that's just the competitive person that I am.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, but then I, was ready to kiss my son goodbye. And I need to share the truth, because people always want to sugarcoat. No, I wanted to get high. I wanted to keep numbing myself. And I remember I said Justin's name, and he's a newborn, and he rolled his whole body over to my voice. And for the first time, I felt something.
Right.
Like someone loved me. Someone was looking for me. And that was my son laying there, and I just couldn't do it. This one right here. I couldn't do it. And I was tired. I had called Project Cope and Lynn. That is not an easy house, Tawana.
Sure.
You got to get up every day at 6:30, everything on the floor for the day. You got to be at a meeting at 7 a.m. I called and stalked that program every day until I got to bed. That lady was tired of me. She's like, all right, Erica, I'll give you a chance.
Yes.
I told her my situation. I picked a place where I knew I would be able to reunify with my son. I got to that program. I did my thing. I did really good. I got a job, Target. I remember that, right? I have never been so proud to ask somebody, do you want paper or plastic? Because I was on the books. I didn't have to do nasty things for stuff. I didn't have to be that girl.
Right.
I don't care how low the pay was. I was proud.
Right.
You want paper and plastic? Do you want a double bag?
Right.
I was so proud to be able to be a part of society. And then I had, mind you, I had been to like 6-7 halfway houses and left. That was the first house I completed. Mm-hmm. And I got my son 3 months earlier than what I was supposed to get him.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the day they rolled him up that ramp and said, here you go. You did a good job.
Wow.
I was scared. I didn't know how to change a fucking diaper. I had to ask other mothers for help.
Right.
How do you put this diaper on? I had lost all that information because I had gotten high for so long. I wanted to numb.
So now we've gone through all of that to get to the good part, because now you've arrived at the good part. But I think there's people that are listening and watching you that want to know how you keep going, because now you have a lot to lose, not just a little, because each day you gain something. So now you're a wife. You're a wife. Yeah, you're a mom. You're a mom to 2 boys that live in the house with you. You are a recovery specialist, and you work at the Recovery Centers of America. You run groups, and you share your experience, strength, and hope with other men and women who were once just like you. And I just got the chills, just so you know, just saying that. And I'm sure on most days it's challenging because you're looking at a mirror image of who you used to be and how hard-headed you used to be and how no one could tell you anything and how you may see the same faces, just like, you know, when we would go in and out of jail and the officers would be like, oh, here she comes again. And it's just like this, it's like a revolving door. And I'm sure you see a lot of this, right? So walk me through a day of work for you. First of all, a day of being a full-time mom, a full-time wife, and then you go and you help somebody recover because you know that it works. Walk me through a day.
Oh man, my day is full. First of all, I get up at 6 o'clock every day.
Crack of dawn.
Crack of dawn every day. I have to. And you know, I do need to shout out my husband because I'm really fortunate. He drops the kids off at school. I don't. I have to be at work really early. So he takes care of them in the morning. I get to work. I worked on the females unit, CSS, for 2 years with women.
Woof.
I don't know how I don't have more gray hairs. I have 2, and I swear it's from working there.
Right.
But no, I had worked there for 2 years. I was on the women's unit, like only. Right. I'd seen men that I have known from around the area or from around the Lynn area where I do recover.
Right.
But you know, it's a constant like care. You got to get up. You got to get them what they need. They need their smoke breaks. You know, they had put me on the group, and they were really liking my groups. My group is called Women's Empowerment.
Right.
You know, so I have to be that example and empower other women.
Right.
You know, because patients don't have nothing else to do but watch.
Right.
You know what I mean? And watch me and watch what I do. And, you know, I'm still an addict. I'm not, you know, perfect, but by all means, I have to be that example for them. And, you know, my shift was 7 to 3:30, and, you know, I would get through that. I would have to, you know, get trained by my managers for other things, you know, and I would get off of work, and then I pick the kids up. Right. You know, and I would come home. I'm not going to sit here and say I cook and clean every day because I don't. I'm exhausted.
Right.
You know, and it's really hard to maintain that life because I'm the person everyone needs something from me. Mom, can you do this? Babe, can you find me that? You know, this is my big boy right here. You know, I'm always needed and pulled in 12 different directions. You know, I'm a sponsor. Right. I have sponsees. I have to do step work in order to pass something down to them. Right. You know, I'm always doing something for my recovery, whether it's helping them or, you know, and during this pandemic, it's even worse because you're, you know, limited to help, you know, but that's my day every day.
So
every day.
Let me ask you this question, because you know how it works and because you know it's a one day at a time program. What has been your biggest challenge that you faced in your recovery this far?
Being consistent because, you know, like I said, I'm always being pulled. Someone always needs to talk to me. My phone's always going off, giving enough attention to my husband, kids, you know, self-growth.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I have to like stay well in order to be well for my job, for my family. I got to keep up with my recovery. And at one point, like it was really hard.
Right.
You know, to get out to do step work. It's because I got to meet my stuff around someone else's schedule. You know, it's definitely just being consistent.
Right.
You know, you have to be consistent with this, or, you know, one thing slacks off, 2 more things slacks off. For me, it's definitely being consistent. So I always recommit to my recovery because you know the difference when you're slacking.
Right.
That's one thing that I love because, you know, I've been around, you know, long enough. If I'm not doing something, you can feel it.
Right.
And then you feel different. You're treating people different. And I do that. Right. I'm not going to sit here and lie. If I don't do any work, I'm going to be different. I'm going to treat you different.
Right.
Without meaning to.
Right.
It's just how it is. You know, there's people that have done that to me because they're not doing well. But just being consistent.
Let me ask you a question.
Shoot, boo.
I've heard people say that in recovery that jail or prison has saved their life. Was this the case for you? Do you think that jail or prison saved your life?
Yes.
And you're saying yes. So I need you to explain to me why, because there's a lot of times that I see addicts going to jail and I don't think it's the proper place for them. I think sometimes you can get more drugs in jail than you can on the street. And
That's true.
sometimes you can get it for free and you don't have to sell your body to get it. And sometimes that's why women go in, because they can get it there for free.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I don't believe that that's the best solution, but I've heard time after time from a lot of addicts that jail or prison has saved their life. And if you're saying yes, then do you think that jail is the answer for every addict, or do you think this should be on an individual basis?
Definitely individual basis. Definitely. For me, because I had no self-control, Tawana, I truly feel the few times I gotten locked up, I swear I was doing the most self-harm. I just truly feel that something was protecting me higher than me.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I went to jail, I was 00, wouldn't eat, like health issues. You know, I truly, for me, because like we talked about, I was that type that had the worst attitude.
Yeah.
You know, I would fight like I was a fighter. You know what I mean? I didn't know anything else. That wasn't my fault. But I just needed to be controlled.
Right.
You know, I think for me, I needed to be, you know, I'm glad those times where I was incarcerated. Unfortunately, you know, I didn't have kids. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything to keep, you know, so a lot of the times I would go in there for 6 months and then I would, you know, a lot of the times I relapsed, but a lot of the times I did well for a little bit after that. I'm like, all right, I had enough time to think.
Right.
You know, like my last time I was in South Bay, I was classed to the hole. You remember that? I had the worst. I was mad at the world. I got classed to the hole for a good 3 months straight. And I'm going to share this. That was the first time I ever read a whole book.
Wow.
Tawana, like that was the first time. I'll never forget it too. It's a good book. But it just goes to show today I'm able to sit with myself now.
Right.
Like unfortunately that had to happen to me.
Right.
But I sat in the hole for 3 months straight. Very little canteen, very little to do, nobody to talk to. And I needed to sit and think. And after that, you know, that's when I did good for a little bit. You know, I was able to sit with myself because a lot of people can't sit in their own skin.
Yes.
They don't know what to do.
Yes.
I was that addict. And, you know, now I'm a homebody. I'm going to keep it on it.
Well, I know we usually call each other when we're not doing things like this with our scarves on at like 8 o'clock in the evening, looking at each other like, is it bedtime? Yes, because that's a normal life today. And again, although I've never used drugs, my experience emotionally and mentally mirrors yours in a lot of ways, DCF and all of those things that go along with just having trauma in your life. And so now today you get to pick and choose what time you want to go to bed, what time you want to wake up. And no one has to tell you those things. But if there was anything, because I showed you that clip at the beginning of the interview, if there was anything that you could do, if you could do one thing that could stop the war on drugs, or that could stop somebody even tonight, somebody that's listening, that's struggling in active addiction, what would be the one thing that you would tell them or share with them that would change their mind about either using, going out to use, selling their body so that they can use, any of those things that you've experienced? What would you share with them to help them to cope and get through that time?
Heal. Ask questions about healing, because we all use to cover up something. And I say that, and I mean that, like, because I wish I could just, and honestly too, like, they got to find out for themselves, but it's just trying to ask questions on healing and pain, because that's all that it comes down to, is healing something. Something happened that you're trying to heal. And then after a while, you just like the drugs. But the healing process for me, you know, that's hard to answer, because you just got to go through it.
You've done a lot of talking out loud, because you've interviewed before on other platforms, and I've watched those interviews and have been very proud of you, because in each interview, You can see the growth in everything, your hair, your skin, your body, your everything. I watched those interviews over the last couple of weeks because I knew that our interview was coming up, and I noticed the change and the growth in you from the first time you did a segment talking about your addiction, and Justin was so little. And that actually pops up on my timeline from time to time because I reposted it. And then you just did something in Peabody where they interviewed you about your recovery and what you were doing in the community. You have come, Erica Marshall, in 7 years, you have become a role model, somebody that people can actually look up to. And I'm sure, way back then, you probably didn't even think that this would be your life today, but it is. So congratulations, because you finally arrived. And it's good to see you. Thank you for showing up. And I'm not talking about just in that seat. I'm talking about in your space in life where you're supposed to be. Thank you for showing up, because we need more people to recover. I see more. I said to you before we started this interview, we've lost so many people that we did time with, that we broke bread with, that have died of drug overdoses. And I don't feel like the war on drugs is really a war, because I think that there's not enough people who see this as a serious problem unless it affects them directly.
Exactly.
So the reason why I wanted you to speak on this is because I need people to know, and I need people to see what recovery looks like. You say you're tired of coming outside of your house and seeing needles and seeing people prostituting on Blue Hill Ave. Well, let's do something to change that. And it's not demeaning people. It's not calling them junkies. It's not calling them prostitutes. It's saying these people somehow, some way are hurting. And so how do we help them heal? You said something earlier, it's time to heal. And I feel like in society, it's time for us to heal from many things. And one of them, even if we've never done it before, is addiction.
Yeah.
In the war on drugs.
Yeah.
And incarceration. It's time for us to start healing. So I'm glad that you finally arrived at your healing point where you can say, I made it. And I know that it's not easy. My mother's been in recovery for 26 years. And when my grandmother passed away, I said, she's going to relapse. And not because I wanted her to, but because it was just a big thing that was happening. And I know that it only takes one thing. Of course, she stayed the course, right? Because why turn back? But again, like you said, it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
And it's not just for an addict, it's for everybody. We just don't see it like that. And we should. That's why people like you and me, we have to set the record straight. Everybody, this is Erica Marshall, and she's in recovery. And you would have never known, if you had seen her today, who she was back then. We put so many labels on people, and I talked to you about this earlier. Drug addicts, dope fiends, prostitutes, convicted felons, all of these things, instead of humanizing people. And like you said, you were bullied growing up, and a part of that was name calling and saying things that were hurtful to people. I don't think people wake up and say, I want to do drugs today. Yes, once they start doing it, that's what they do because they want to numb the pain. But it doesn't initially start out like that. I had somebody write to me and say, thank you for being so compassionate towards people who are addicts, because you've never judged us. Only God can do that. I just want you to heal. Shoot, I'm in my healing process. And I have to take it one day at a time. And I use your 12 steps because they have become my 12 steps, because they have become my reality. So I think that it's time that people get on board with, if you see an addict, help an addict. It's you can't, how many, before the coronavirus, I would see Valerie Baker.
Oh, that's my girl. I love her.
One time I saw her in South Station and she was full of dirt. Yeah. And she came up to me and she hugged me and I hugged her back. And people were staring at me and they were like, what are you doing hugging that nasty lady?
Yeah.
Just the things that we say or that we think about another person is what I want to challenge people to do. I want people to do something different.
Yep.
This is Erica Marshall. She's an addict in recovery. And if you didn't know that, you would never know her story. So it's time for us to wake up and say, let's start helping people. Let's start doing something different. Let's change the narrative on how we treat our people, because it's in the Black and brown community like nobody's business.
That's right.
It is really bad on Blue Hill Ave.
Awful.
It is really bad on Mass Ave. And
that's
yes,
awful.
It is so bad. I mean, I've seen that you've gone down there a couple of times, and you used to live under the bridge down there, and I know every time you go down there, you're like, oh my God, this couldn't have been my life. You're grateful that it's not, but you feel bad for all the people that are still there, all the people that are left behind.
Yep.
So so they say experience is the best teacher, right? So I want you to teach somebody how to be kind to themselves, because what do you do to be kind to yourself every day as a person who is recovering from a drug addiction? What is it that you do every day? Because the first thing I know you think about is, I'm not going back to jail. Nobody wants to go back there, especially during these times.
Oh man.
But what,
you know what? I'm big on like self-care now. Like, you know, and I'm not talking about just self-care with getting the hair and nails done, because that is a big self-care for me. Because if you know me, every 2 weeks.
Right. Right.
No, but you know, my biggest thing is like, you know, reaching out to other women. Right. You know, just continue to get some fresh information in your head, because addicts and alcoholics, we think we're slick. We think we know all the information. I'm sorry. You know, even with, you know, a lot of people with clean time and recovery, like we just think we know. I always have room for growth.
Right.
You know what I mean? One thing, I'm always honest, like I still got, you know, really bad anger issues, and I always keep that up front.
Right.
You know, like something really bad just happened to me yesterday, and my instinct was, do you know who I am? Right. Like, and it's like, you don't just immediately go to that person. You really challenge yourself and just continue to stick on that person you've worked with. Like I've worked to be, you know, somebody, you know, special to myself now.
Right. I
used to hate myself. Self-hatred is like, you know, just don't move backward. I don't ever want to use and feel that again. You know, when I saw that video of that girl and the cop, like when I see cops and I say hi, it's good morning. Like, you don't know.
Right. Oh, I know.
Usually I'd be like, oh God, stop looking at the ground, being a weirdo. So they ask you questions now. Good morning. You know, it's just self-love. Keep the information, keep new information around you. Don't sit there and get unique, because we tend to get unique in recovery.
And different.
You know, I am so proud of myself. I just keep new information around me. I keep people that love me around me, you know, and you know who loves you and who don't. We're humans. We know. I know who loves me and who don't. And I keep the people that love me around. I don't try to chase people. I don't try to chase that love now, because I've learned to like really love myself.
Right.
You know, and it's okay if you do, but just know you're going to end up somewhere far if you do that, like I did.
So before we wrap up, what's next on the horizon for 7-year, coming up on 8-year clean, Erica Marshall? I'm married with kids in my own place, in a job where I help people who are sick and suffering like me. And I'm sure you probably run across some people that you've been incarcerated with who you're like, oh, and they're probably like, oh my God, who? I'm sure they probably stare for a long time before they really can say anything to you, because the transformation is huge for you. You definitely have leveled up in a way that I'm sure a lot of people, and not that I didn't think you could do it, and not that I didn't think you were strong enough. I think that I've always seen you at your worst, so I didn't know what your best looked like. So for that, I apologize. So, you know, at this point, what's next for you? what's next for Erica Marshall? Because I know you're writing a book. So
I actually, yes.
There you have it.
It's going to be called Purpose, because today I have one, and it's like going back from then to now. Mm-hmm. That's the last word we think of ourselves as, I have a purpose today, and I truly believe that God uses me as a vessel. I just had to get on the boat, you know what I mean? And, that's next. And right now I'm going back to school. I got some things to finish.
Yes.
It's time, Right. I got to go back to school and finish this in order to go to the next chapter. And actually, I've always wanted to be a nurse, but I am not a math person. I'm not good with the number thing.
You saw I struggled last semester with math, so don't come over here asking me any questions, because I will you'll get an F. I'm telling you, I had to have a tutor, so don't ask me to help you. It won't happen.
For real. And that's something that, has been fearful for me, I never drove. I grew up in the projects. Everything was right there. So I am working on my permit right now.
Good for you.
And I'm not ashamed to say that. Right. It's just never happened for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And those are the two biggest thing right now is, school, finishing school, and my and driving. I just learned how to drive. Shout out to Kelly Marshall, Alvin, Van, my husband. There's people that love me enough to push me.
Right.
And say, Erica, you can do it. Right. I still, just because I have 7 years doesn't mean I need help still.
Right.
There's a lot of things that, facing fears, so those are my biggest fears right now. And, it's time to face them. I've completed everything else. Just because I've, stopped going to jail, stopped using, I still have to move forward, and the book, driving, and finishing school is next for me. And I do want to become a nurse because that's always been my thing. I've always wanted to help other people,
And I think that you would be great at it and so much more. And again, I can't tell you how proud I am of you, to see your growth. You have great potential, and the world needs more people like you, because see, people like you and me who have been somewhere, who have been through something, we're always more compassionate and more empathetic and more sympathetic towards somebody else, even somebody we don't know. Yeah. Because we know what a struggle is like. It may not be the same struggle as theirs, but we know what a struggle is like. And you really don't want to see somebody go. If you can prevent somebody from doing what you did, it's easier to tell them, because I know experience is the best teacher, but it's not always the best way to go.
That's right.
So for people like me and you, it's time that we push ourselves, when this pandemic is over, really out into the community and be the face of change. Because I think that there's more people who need to come out, and more people who, because they're uneducated about addiction, about jails, about people who go to jail. You feel what you don't know. And so what happens is that you become ignorant towards it. Yeah. And that's our biggest challenge in society and in America.
Yep.
It's time for us to get real and for us to understand that it's time to help each other, especially in the Black and brown community. We see too much tearing down. We see too many people in the streets that have no home, that have no food, that are out selling their body, that are addicts, that are on the run from the law. And what are we going to do? People like you and me, to make a difference so that something changes, because change is on the horizon.
Yes. And, I'm glad you brought that up. It's I'm glad that I was able to stay around and stay, clean and in recovery, because I've had a lot of people come to me for help that you would not expect. Those same bullies that used to bully me, private message me for help. And I'm not saying that to be but just to change and be on the other side. And I'm still going to help you.
And it's true.
You know what I mean?
I'm not going to do
that. I'm not going to, and I'm not going to sit there and, gloat about that. But bottom line is, you don't know who you're going to need. So be careful when you treat people like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you don't know. There's people that have degrees, you know, that come to me for help. There's people, you know what I mean? You just don't know.
And you want to know what's crazy? It's true, because I called you because I needed to get somebody in a program, and you laughed at me so hard, and you said, Tawana, you don't remember this girl? And I said, no, I just need you to help her. I don't care, like, what. You know, like, we had a fist fight and we went to the hall. I'm like, oh, but can you still help her? My God. I think you are so right. It doesn't matter where you were, it's where you are now. And it's time for us to extend a hand. And I can't wait to see when this pandemic is over, what's next for Erica Marshall outside of your house and outside of Recovery of Americas, because that's where you work at. So anybody who needs a bed, a program, who needs some help, Erica Marshall, she's on Facebook. Look her up. She can share her experience, strength, and hope, even if you're not ready to go to a program, even if you feel like you still have one more run left in you. She may be the person to change your mind. Look her up.
Can I say one thing too?
Sure, go right ahead.
Like, I want to say, and I want to talk to the people that are on methadone and maintenance, because I feel like even if you're an addict, like, they're the most judged, you know. And if you're on maintenance and if you're on something, honestly, do what you need to do. And because someone, oh, you're not clean because you're on maintenance, you know what? If that keeps you alive and if that works for you, you do it. Because people are going to talk trash no matter what. Like, bottom line, from me working in treatment, I've seen people make it on maintenance. Have I seen a lot? Not, yeah. But I've seen a whole lot of people make it on maintenance. So if you're on maintenance, continue doing what you're doing. I don't like that stigma. It makes me sick because they're still one of me. I am no better than to talk about someone because they're on maintenance. A lot of people can't even sit there and speak truthfully because they get downplayed because they're on maintenance. It's not cool. And I don't like it.
You said that there's some people that are on maintenance that have made it, but there's some people who don't do maintenance because they're afraid to be judged and they're not in here anymore. So it's safe to say that if you need the help, I mean, she's not the only person, but she's a person that I know that will help anybody. So look her up, Erica Marshall, everybody. She's on Facebook, last name spelled with 2 L's. She'd be more than willing to talk to you, maybe even talk you off a ledge, maybe give you some of what she had at the beginning when she was struggling, when she still didn't know which way she was going to go. Everybody remember, it's a yet for anybody. You heard her story. You heard how it all started for her. But look at how it's ending. Erica, thank you. Thank you for sitting down with Now Your Normal Conversation. Continue to do well, and I will continue to follow you on your journey. And you're just awesome. And I love your strength. And I encourage you to get that education, get that license, finish that book, and keep moving forward. Because when I look at you, I don't see where you were. I just see where you are right now. And that's people's biggest problem, is they're so stuck in the past when you've moved on from it. So you keep moving far away from that past because it's no longer who you are. I love you. Stay blessed. Everybody, thank you for joining Not Your Normal Conversation.
Thank you.
With your girl, Tawana B. and Erica Marshall, everybody. Have a good night. See you soon. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm.